Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. We will be speaking about EMC Documentum for Life Science Solutions Suite 4.0 and especially covering the modules Research and Development and Submission Store and View. Before we begin, we wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. All attendees are muted and in listen mode only. As we have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation, please direct your questions through the chat directly to the organizer. We will try to answer your questions during the webcast, but if you need fuller answers or if we run out of time, we will be answering them later via email. Please be aware that this webinar will be recorded and we will send you the link later next week. Today's presenters are Hubert Meckel, Principal Systems Engineer at EMC, and Frank Dentrone, President of FME US. You can see which agenda they will be covering today. And with this, I would like to hand it over to Hubert, who will introduce you with the regulatory modules of EMC Life Science Solutions.
Thanks. From my side, a warm welcome to this webinar too, and thanks for taking the time. My name is Hubert Meckel, and I'm a Principal Systems Engineer at EMC in the Enterprise Content Division. I will now give you an overview of our life science solution, in particular in our regulatory domain modules. Let's begin with the architecture of our solution. The base of our solution is the Enterprise Content Management System Documentum, with its well-known functionalities, stability, scalability, and security. Documentum is widely used in the life science space, and we are proud to offer our own value add-on solutions on top of it. On top of the Documentum solution, we have the D2 framework, which is responsible for providing the user interface and the implementation of the business rules. Documentum D2 is the advanced, configurable, content-centered application client for Documentum content management, offering a highly intuitive and personalizable user experience that can accommodate individual preferences and working styles of different users while ensuring compliance with organizational policies and standards. D2 makes knowledge workers more productive, reduces training costs, and accelerates user adoption of content management applications. Documentum D2 takes the complexity out of enterprise content management with a powerful configuration framework for creating purpose-built content solutions without the need for time-consuming customizations. This unique approach enables organizations to respond more rapidly to changing business needs and accelerate time to value for ECM deployments. Additionally, it's important to note that the whole solution is adapted to your need only by configuration, which of course has a positive influence on implementation time and validation efforts. Back to the architecture. On top of D2, we already configured the so-called unified solution layer. That provides you with a complete implementation of the DIA, EDM, and ETMF reference model, plus all the necessary configurations based on best practices like life cycles, workflows, security models, and a complete set of compliance features. But that's not enough. Extending that unified solution layer with additional functionality and configurations, we offer 4 different modules on top. In the clinical domain, we have an ETMF module. In the regulatory domain, we have a research and development module and the submission store and view module. And last but not least, we have the quality and manufacturing module. For that picture, you could already see the unique value of having the different modules on one unified solution layer. Not only do you avoid doing the same configurations in different applications, you also have one single source of truth and do not need to copy documents which are used in different domains. For example, there are documents which are part of a submission, but later on, perhaps in some variations, they are used for quality and manufacturing, like specifications, test methods, stability documents, and others. They could be cross-referenced so that in case of changes, you are always aware of dependencies. But today, let's focus on the 2 regulatory domain modules, Research and Development, or short R&D, and Submission Store and View, or short SSV. The other modules already have been introduced in the last webinars, from which the recordings could be found on the FME website. Let's now dig deeper. What are the regulatory modules all about? I want to start with the submission store and view, or in short SSV, because it builds the bridge between the past process and the future process. This module will be discussed in more detail later by Frank, but here's a short overview. The idea of submission store and view module is the fact that most customers highly control the content of their submission until it comes down to publish. Then, what we see at almost every customer site, the submission gets stored on the file share or even worse as paper file somewhere. With that, the submission is not under control and only limited, searchable or reusable. Additionally, it is not possible to have a context of the submission, for example, no related communication with the regulators at hand. This is where submission store and view kicks in. In the first step, submissions in eCTD, NES, or paper formats could automatically import it into the Documentum repository. In the back end, the structure is rebuilt and existing XML backbones get extracted and the information of it applied automatically. As soon as the eCTD submissions are imported, they could be viewed in their structure using the built-in eCTD viewer, including the navigation following cross-document hyperlinks. Of course, through the import, the documents all get searchable and with that reusable. Additionally, you have the possibility to have all the agency or whatever submission-related communication to be in direct contact with the submission. The user interface lets you see the submission, its properties, and all communication in one screen, which gives you the benefit of directly getting all context in a glance. For the communication gathering, the Microsoft Outlook integration is part of the solution to be able to easily import all correspondence email into the SSV module. Like all other life science solution modules, you have regional support in the user interface, and of course, there are no restriction language being it on the content or metadata side. Talking about regional support, we've already built in the logic to fully support various regional eCTD formats. And here you could see a number of high-level key benefits, not only for the SSV, but for the complete solution suite. Out of the box, we support a number of different browsers without the need of ActiveX controls. As the solution is built on HTML5 technology, it could immediately be used on tablets or other mobile devices. For the life science solution, you have one vendor for the application solution, the repository, and the platform, which avoids incompatibilities and, of course, discussions and responsibilities. You can have your documents stored in one repository, including all regulatory, clinical, non-clinical, research and development, quality and manufacturing documents without the need to have different copies of one document around. Last but not least, we can offer you the full bandwidth from you do it completely on your own in your own data center to software as a service and all thinkable flavors in between. As said before, Frank will go into more detail on functionalities in the submission store and view module. Let's now switch gears and have a look at the research and development module, the second module in the regulatory domain. For the research and development, or short R&D module, you can manage out of the box the creation, review, and approval of all submission relevant documents. We pre-configured all doc types or artifacts like the Drug Information Association DIA calls them, all dictionaries and taxonomies according to the EDM and the ETMF reference model of the DIA. Same is true for the life cycles and associated workflows. We support directly all submission relevant pieces from all domains, non-clinical, clinical, quality, and regulatory. Of course, we have an integrated control template management. Additionally, we automatically could synchronize uni or bidirectional the metadata between the application and the Microsoft Office content to avoid duplicate entries and with that to reduce errors. Another very interesting functionality is the collaborative authoring or collaborative review. With that, different people could annotate, review, and collaborate on a document in parallel in real time. After different people have delivered the input, the author could directly merge that input into one document without the need to retype the changes. That drastically improves productivity, while it is afterwards still possible to determine which reviewer has provided what input. Additionally to the predefined artifacts, dictionaries, and taxonomies, we already deliver out of the box a number of predefined workflows and lifecycle, which are already assigned to the corresponding artifacts. Of course, it is very easy to adopt that to your needs if necessary. That best practice approach makes it possible to directly start using the system without the need of lengthy customization or implementation. And another key functionality is the pre-built relationship between regulatory applications and their belonging documents. With that bidirectional relationship, you could not only determine which documents are in an application, but all the opposite way around, answering the question, in which application is this document used? That's very beneficial, especially if you want to change a document and have to assess the risk. That risk is dependent on the number and type of application the document is used in. Of course, in this presentation, I could only show you a little bit of the rich feature set of our life science solution, and today, especially the regulatory domain modules. For more information, please feel free to contact your EMC contact or FME. With that, I will hand over to Frank. Frank, it's up to you.
Okay, Hubert, thank you very much. That was a good overview, and you're really setting the stage for my segment of the webinar. So I just want to make sure that I can click to the next slide. Okay. So what I'm going to do is give a little more overview, a little more detail on SSV, because I think that was one of the main themes for the webinar. Also, what I'm going to share with the group here is what's been done, or the improvements that were made in the SSV module in 4.0, and then in the recent release there's some additional enhancements that were made by EMC. So I'm going to summarize those as well, and then the last segment of my part of the webinar is to talk about where FME can accelerate the process in terms of data migration. So customers that are interested in moving, looking into the direction of the D2 Life Science solutions, that's an area that we can accelerate with our migration product. So what I'll do is just kind of summarize here SSV. Some of this Hubert summarized already, but I'll just add a few bits and pieces to the story here. So as mentioned, the ability to import and store regulatory submissions, so both the eCTDs and non-eCTDs, so the NIS and paper formats. I think you heard that already. The ability to view the imported submissions with the submission viewer components or widgets. So this both supports current, cumulative, and sequence-based views for the full application lifecycle. I know Hubert covered a bit of the correspondence, so having that ability to track or associate the regulatory activity correspondence between the industry, meaning the customers, and the health agencies. So that's very important to track that level of correspondence. And also being able to view the correspondences and other domain documents. So as we heard earlier by Hubert, the suite, the solution, the different modules, there's this notion of domains. So there's quality, regulatory, safety, clinical, etc. These are various domains where there's documentation that's generated. So having the ability to leverage those documents within those domains and associate those to regulatory submissions is very important. Also searching the archive submissions via faceted navigation. So sort of when you do searches, there's pre-configured facets or groupings in which you can filter and navigate the data that's searched upon. And which I've waited for many years, the ability to navigate inter-document linking. I've been involved with Documentum platform for many years, and this has always been a very crucial aspect from a regulatory perspective, being able to view and navigate within the Documentum repository. So this to me is a significant advantage. Also supporting for importing XSD-based submissions, so handling the study tagging files as well. And also ability to group related applications and submissions together as activity packages. All right, so just a little recap of what is an eCTD submission. So it's made up of a number of the 5 modules. So the electronic common technical documents is based on ICH, so regulatory submissions worldwide. The eCTD contains, table of contents. It manages all of the metadata for a regulatory submission. So this, as Hubert mentioned, is that XML, the backbone. So this is where all the structure is behind that eCTD hierarchy. So module 1 is known as the regional module, because it covers, there's different documentation for each region or country, and 2 through 5 are known as more common modules, since they're common across all the various regions. And the good news about the suite, so the life science suite, especially in the regulatory module, all of these domain artifacts are available within the suite. So having that unified platform, having this in one, let's say, solution, has a tremendous advantage in terms of efficiencies in business process and document management. So here's a bit of a business process around this SSV solution. You have your publish and submit, which we heard earlier, and I've mentioned a little as well, where you have, depending on the publishing tool that you have in place, that would happen as you have today, and that the assumption is that you'll be publishing to, in most cases, what I've seen in my experience, to network shares, as Hubert mentioned, and then you have your final submission that goes to the health authority. But you'll also have legacy submissions. So these are submissions that were submitted to, in the past to health authorities. These both scenarios can be covered. Bringing those into the solution, so indexing the submission, so the eCTD submissions automatically inheriting metadata, a single step for indexing, for both NIS and paper, and we're storing this information, the submission, into the Documentum repository. So there's some automation that's available, so preserving that structure, the hierarchy, and also importing correspondence documents. And the next phase in the business process will be able to search regulatory records, so being able to look into the archive, if you will, and last, being able to navigate and have a few screenshots in addition to what Hubert has shared with the group. All right, so for those who may be wondering, what does that mean from this external, the file store where you're publishing? So for those who have been publishing to those network shares, the submissions generated by the tool, that's publishing tools, are assumed that that data will be shared on a network folder out on the network, somewhere that is accessible by both the end user and the solution, the Documentum content server. So this will enable submission importing, turn on sharing for the relevant file system, so that the appropriate users, including both the Documentum platform as well as the end user, have access. Read only is sufficient, and this is where the content of those the published output can be consumed into the repository, both manual and also there's some automation possibilities that can be done behind the scene on the background. So just some highlights for those who may not be as familiar. Just wanted to cover a bit on what was done in 4.0. I know that the 4.1 release was just provided to us, to the user community in January. This will give you a little roll-up, and then I'll show you some enhancements that were done in 4.1. So from an R&D perspective, there was some regulatory activity packages. This is where you can group related applications or submissions together. So this was something that was added. And also the ability to register submissions, so pre-registering submissions that are not created. So there's a mechanism in place where you can create your applications and then register a submission, and then at that point you can associate your published submission to that pre-registration. So this is something that was added in the 4.0 release. And what was unique to SSV is the ability to associate application submissions with other domain documents, such as mentioned correspondence, you have quality, clinical, non-clinical, regulatory, labeling, and safety. Submission viewer enhancements, this was done, and there's been additions which I think we covered a little bit before, but this was something that was added in 4.0 and then further enhanced. The ability to compare documents side by side in a particular workspace. definitely useful for viewing, documents that were replaced or revised across submissions in a particular application, and then the ability to search registered submissions and correspondence documents together, and also the ability to launch viewer to an individual submission from submission form or documents. And keep in mind, an application could have, dozens or hundreds of submissions associated to it. So a bit of a recap on 4.1, which I have a few screenshots. I'll kind of go over them slowly, but I have, this is the summary, and then I'll show you what they look like. Within the submission tree, having the ability to expand or collapse all the different node levels, so for view and navigation, so you could expand all or collapse all. Some usability enhancements within that submission tree, being able to group the study documents in module 4 and 5 into folders based on file tag ID, and I'll show you what that looks like. In addition to that, adjacent to the viewer render XML, the STF files, all of that metadata is to the documents. Adjacent to that, SPL can be viewable, providing system-related properties to document level, such as ID, checksum, addition. So there's additional metadata that's been integrated into the viewing of the submission tree viewer, and also ability to assign individual security at the document or even the module folder level within the submission. And there's been some optimization in terms of performance for the import process, importing the submissions into the system. So I'll just walk you through a few screenshots just to give you a view of what that looks like. If it go to the next screen here, just give me a moment.
Hello, hopefully the team can hear me again.
Yes, I can hear you, Frank.
Okay, my apologies to everyone. Apologies for that interruption of the webinar, so we can keep going. So let me get back to the screen. So again, my sincere apologies. So here I wanted to show some screenshots of the way the grouping of study documents. So on the left-hand side, you can see the individual study grouping, and on the right-hand side, when you expand that, it shows all of the study components grouped by file tag type. So just want to give you a visual on what that looks like. It's always helpful to see what the screens, in addition to discussing them. So here, I'm just going to the next slide. Hopefully, here we go. This is where I wanted to show you what that the study tagging file structure. So on the left, you can click on the STF file, opens it in the adjacent navigation widget on the right-hand side, and you can see the link. So this is where you can navigate and click and navigate through the STF structure and have access to the documentation within this view. So it's another screenshot of that process. Go to the next screenshot. This is where you have opening study documents. You have study documents cannot open in two ways. Oops, I think we went one too many, so here we go. You'll see on the left from the submission viewer, and then on the right you can see from the study tagging file. So there's two ways of accessing the content through the navigation through the interface. And here we have the SPL viewing. So you can click on the SPL file. It opens again in the adjacent submission doc viewer widget. So you can navigate through the SPL and look at the content on the right-hand side of the viewer. So with that, I wanted to just jump into, I know we have a few more minutes. I wanted to give you a little idea of what FME could bring, what we bring to the table in terms of acceleration. So you heard a number of capabilities with the life sciences solutions or the modules, and where we see ourselves fitting into this portfolio is around getting customers accelerating them to the life science platform of the D2 Life Science Suite. So just a couple of questions, and then we'll discuss it a little more. So depending on where you're coming from, where are you migrating data? Is it within an existing repository or to a new? And again, depending on, there's some technical review in terms of versions of software, but the Life Science Suite can coexist with other applications that you have within your operating environment. So that's a conversation that can be had. And then also, where do you store master data? So in terms of metadata, product information, your regulatory information like REM data, where does that exist today, and how would we, and part of what FME brings to the table, and we can navigate that data with you and actually migrate a lot of that information into the platform. Product information and regulatory applications, et cetera. Those are just examples. The D2 Life Science Suite has a well-defined data model, as we talked a little bit about earlier in this webinar, and having that ability to map source to target information. That's our sweet spot in terms of FME Migration Center. Also, let's skip down further. Documents have a variety of dependencies around registration data. So regulatory documents, for example, get associated within the solution to regulatory applications, and also those applications are associated to products within the solution. And this we can help with our Migration Center software. And the key is being D2 aware. So FME Migration Center has a D2 module to support this process. So here's just a high-level summary. I mentioned database on the left upper corner because a lot of that metadata or master data is coming from database applications or RIM solutions, and we have the ability to read that using our database adapter and bridge that to D2 with our D2 adapter for a variety of that master data that's required to implement within your D2 Life Science solution or platform. This gives you just a summary of different migration paths, which, again, this could be looked at post the webinar. This is recorded, so you can take a look at all of the different capabilities we have. I just wanted to share this in context of implementation of the D2 Life Science Suite. Just a bit of a process flow in which we go through when we're looking at data migration, that acceleration to getting your current data or operating environment to a D2 solution repository, analyzing source information, being able to organize that into collections of data that needs to be migrated. So, for example, clinical documentation versus regulatory documentation, we have the ability to organize that in different segments. That's our organization. And then the ability to transform. That's the mapping process, where we take your current system and map that into the D2 Life Sciences data model. Once this is taken place, we're able to validate, make sure all of the requirements are met in terms of data mapping and business process or business rules in terms of data. And then any anomalies we find, we're able to correct those prior to the migration of the import process. So this is just a high-level workflow that we go through within FME Migration Center to get you from where you are today into the target environment, D2 Life Science platform in particular. Just go to the next slide here. A little bit of a delay, so just give it a second. So here are just some examples and what it means to be D2 aware. So from a data migration perspective, what we've done is analyze the D2 architecture and implemented a module, what we call an adapter, that is supporting the importation of documentation from your source environment being, let's say it's a historical document repository. We're able to read the source and then map that into what the target data model, life science solution in particular, and we are able to honor or trigger the D2 rules that are needed to make sure those documents are in the future state, in the future platform, in the appropriate way. So this is just some examples to give you an indication of what we're supporting. And last slide here, and then we'll open it up for some questions. This is just a summary, so unique features of Migration Center. So we're kind of that Swiss Army knife, having a variety of capabilities. So managing data volumes or large data volumes, having a central transformation. This Migration Center has a core database where all of the intelligence is living. We have a process flow, a repeatable process flow, and how we go about data migration. We have a variety of configuration or metadata transformation rules that we can provide based on customers' unique situations if necessary. We can real-time simulate, so prior to importing, we can review in our Migration Center interface what the transformation, what the outcome is going to look like before we actually import the data into the target environment. And we have the ability to do delta migration. So as we all know, these systems are living, so we can do an initial baseline collection of data that needs to be migrated. We can transition that or migrate that into the future state environment, and we know what's changing in the source. So we look at what's been added or modified, and this is what we declare delta migration. So this is a crucial feature in terms of a migration process. Having that full audit capability for regulated environments is crucial. And we also have an open architecture, so depending on some unique customers' needs, we're able to make adjustments to our technology. It's using a Java API, so we have that flexibility if it's necessary. And I believe that concludes my segment, and we were going to transition to Q&A so we can field some questions from the group. So I think we're going to give folks just a few minutes to post some questions in the chat. Give me a moment. I think there's some questions coming our way. Let's see. We have first question. I think this one's towards you, Hubert, so let me read it. So if we're talking about a solution or unified solution, if I need additional documents in different areas, like, for example, quality documents, which are submission relevant, do I have to copy them to different instances, or do I need different repositories?
Okay, I'll take that one. Thanks, Frank. Yes, you do not need different repositories or even different copies of the document, as it is all on one layer. We have everything based on the unified solution layer, so you could directly link documents that you need in other domains directly there. Or what you could do, if you say, well, it is not exactly the same document, then you could have documents in different domains and then could have a relationship between them. So as soon as you change one of those documents, you automatically get notified, hey, there's another document that's depending on that one, or that is more or less the same. So, but everything could be done in one repository, or you could even, if you want, have it in separate repositories and could then have the relationship between the different documents.
Okay, that's great. That's definitely good information. I know in the past, when I was first, some time ago, getting up to speed on the Life Science Suite, the platform architecture, I had the same question, so I'm not too surprised. So let's see, we have a few more minutes for a couple more questions. We have another one, which I believe is for me. How do you migrate the D2 life science, that metadata, the registration data, into, so how does that happen? So we have, I think I mentioned it in my segment, where we can read that master data, like product information. We actually can read it from a database or from a spreadsheet. So customers that have the ability to store their metadata or product information or regulatory applications with metadata, we can actually read that either directly from a database or from an Excel spreadsheet, and we can then migrate that into the life science suite, into the solution, into the repository. So let's see, I think we have another one here, which I believe is for me. And I think we covered this, but I'm going to mention it. So is there a way to load the regulatory submissions automatically? I think I mentioned this. So there's an initial import, but then as you know, there's various amendments or follow-ups, submission or regulatory activity post the initial submission. So there is configuration capability, and maybe you can chime in, Hubert, if I misstate anything, but there's a way for the background process to look for those additional submission of that regulatory activity, and that can then be ingested into the repository in the background.
Totally correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for keeping me honest. And I think we have one more question. We have, and this one I believe is for you, Hubert, or we can both take it if necessary. If I import my published submission using SSV, is it possible to have a granular security test? So is it imported using one permission or many?
Yeah, I can take it. You can have it very granular because, by Documentum, you have the documents imported as different objects, and therefore each object could be associated with different security. So therefore, for example, different doc types or documents from different areas could have separate ACLs attached to it, and therefore you could have a very granular security model, which is already in place as soon as you import the submission.
Okay. That's good. That's good information. So I think there might be a few more questions, but I know we're kind of running out of time. So if there's any additional questions that were shared, we'll collect and we'll then respond to those. But then also, we want to thank everyone for your attendance. It's greatly appreciated. My apologies for the audio hiccup. So again, sorry that took place, but luckily we recovered a little quickly. And here, for those who may have missed some previous webcasts that we have, you can see them on the screen. They're recorded if you're interested in what Hubert and I covered in the quality and manufacturing area, as well as the electronic trial master file. Those recordings are available to you, so feel free to check that out. And if you have any questions regarding this webinar or the ones I just mentioned that were recorded, you can certainly reach out to either or both Hubert and I. Will definitely welcome additional questions, and so we can share that knowledge with each other. And there's additional resources available to you, both on the EMC website and the FME website, and also our FME Migration Center website as well. So there's a lot of knowledge out there. Again, thank you all for attending, and looking forward to seeing you on the future webinars that I'm sure we'll be having in the next coming weeks and months. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.